Hello, everyone. Welcome to the What's Appening podcast. This season, we're interviewing GPT creators. What's Happening is brought to you by 3 Advance, the development team for startups. I'm Rafael Testai, and I'm here with my co-host, Paul Murphy. Today, we're going to talk about AI GPTs and how they can fuel marketing efforts. We have a very special guest in Jen Bryan. Jen, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Looking forward to digging in.
Awesome. So Jen Bryan, as you'll see from the description in the show notes below, she's a growth marketer, and we'll talk about what that means in a moment. She's a marketer turned agency founder, and her content is all about helping marketers and founders, this could be GPT founders, do their best and most productive work. So Paul, why did you think Jen was a great fit for the podcast?
Okay, before jumping in, Jen, as you know, Raf and Jen, I'm good friends with Craig. That's Jen's co-founder at Velocity Growth. But I've been particularly tuned into Jen the past, almost year or so, when Jen kicked off the 100-day challenge, when she started, really amassing a following on Instagram. I think by Christmas you had crossed 100,000, Jen. But the content is all about AI and GPTs, or a hell of a lot of it is about AI and GPTs. Jen is also an Irish woman, so I've got an affinity for the Irish doing amazing things online. So I figured this would be a great opportunity to bring her on the pod and find out more about GPTs and find out more about her.
So I got to ask you, because I'm also part of our audience listening to this, I'm a GPT founder. What is a growth marketer? Tell us about your agency, Velocity Growth, etc.
Yeah, so a growth marketer, do you know what? I don't love the term, but I use it because it's most aligned with tech startups in particular. They use the terminology because I think any marketer should be a growth marketer. Any marketing should endeavor to grow a business. But that is the premise of it. It is essentially marketing that is with the view of driving and growing the revenue of a business, whether that's getting them from startup phase into growth stage or from going from growth stage into scale stage. It's about looking at holistically the process that would work best for that. And my specialist area is paid acquisition. So I largely work in performance marketing, which is what I call dollar in, dollar out marketing. You're going to put money behind that ad and you hope to get money back from that advert. But there's a multitude of service lines that fall within growth marketing, and that's what Velocity Growth does then. So even though I'm the specialist on the performance marketing side, we have SEO, lifecycle marketing, looking at the different verticals within marketing that support that growth journey for primarily startups to Series A.
And that's one of the things that interests me as well. Like, we build apps all the time, and we know how to build apps, but we are by no means experts in getting them out there and getting them used. And what I love about Velocity Growth is they do the thing that we don't do very well. They help grow audiences. They put products out there, and there's a feedback loop even that feeds into some of the things that we do, so that there's marketing of the apps and product within the app as well as sort of outside, and there's viral sort of like flywheel that can take place. So I love Velocity Growth. I'm a big fan, Jen, and Craig's been doing his thing, and we've been working together on a couple of things on the side. So it's exciting to learn more about that side of things too.
Nice.
Cool. This is like completely off script, but it caught my eye. In the background of Jen, is that an iPod Nano in the back?
It is not an iPod Nano. It is an iPod Classic.
iPod Classic.
Yeah, I got that iPod Classic when I was 15 years old, and it's still working. Whenever I feel a moment of teenage angst, I pull it out.
That's cool. When you have video calls, do a lot of people ask you about that?
I find a lot more ask about the Game Boy Color.
Game Boy Color? Okay. I remember playing those back in the day.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, you can have the best product or GPT in the world, but best gets beat by best known. And if you're a GPT founder, how could you market a GPT? Any advice for our listeners?
It depends on what the end goal is after launching them. I mean, I've had great success in terms of rolling out GPTs that are very simple. Like, I've inputted all of the data that I used to create hooks for my videos for Instagram, for example, compiled those into spreadsheets and put those into ChatGPT as a custom GPT and gave it detailed instructions to spit out similar hooks depending on the user input. And I've used that to grow my audience by just putting that out there as a video and saying, hey, I've compiled all this data for you. You don't need to trawl through it. You can just use this very quickly and, have your next viral hit, essentially. I mean, that's the most basic, stripped back, simple version of it. That allowed me to grow my audience, but it could also be a stepping stone into something else. For example, Google Ads audits is another good example. As a marketing agency, you typically onboard a client via an audit process first, because you have to find out everything they've come. Can I curse?
Sometimes.
You have to find out everything they fucked up before you can figure out what to do better. And essentially it just starts from there. But if you had a GPT and you allowed, say, the user to input their information, hook everything up, export the data, in you go, and the audit comes back straight away as part of your onboarding flow, what an experience that is comparative to, speaking to me, getting access to the account, back to me for the audit, back to you to explain. But, that onboarding takes 2 weeks compared to the turnaround that we can do now. Now, largely we will do that audit internally as opposed to giving the user direct access to it. But the same premise is true. You could do either scenario.
So are you using most of your GPTs then, Jen, internally? There are things that sort of like help your team to be a lot more efficient. They're not so much like public GPTs.
Yeah.
And have you thought about moving them like public, or anything that maybe could be turned into something that maybe would be more broadly applicable, or I guess less of your secret sauce that you might want to put into the world?
It's interesting because the secret sauce is out there in the world already for a large part when it comes to, a marketing agency. So long as they're, doing good work, then largely the secret sauces are the same pretty much. But I've thought about it a lot, but what I tend to do is individual GPTs. So like when a new client comes in, they'll fill out some onboarding information, but then I'll go out and I will look at all of the other data sources that I can find for their competitors. I'll export their ads from the transparency libraries. I'll customize that GPT entirely so that the entire team can use that specifically for them moving forward. There is certainly the potential for saying, okay, this is a holistic view of like everything we've seen in the e-commerce space, specifically in Ireland or specifically in the US or something like that, and structuring it around that. But as of right now, our primary focus with them has been about improving team efficiency and improving margins, because as you know, in the world of service, margins are tied to time. And if every scrap of time that you can improve upon, you're just improving your margins. So I feel like a lot of service agencies, regardless of industry, regardless of if you're building an app or, marketing, should probably be looking to a lot of these tools to align and improve their margins, improve the bottom line revenue for the business.
What about the rest of your team? Have they embraced the GPTs too? Is it easy for them to understand how to use them? Are they updated a lot? Is it just you that's sort of managing your own GPTs, or is there a process internally that sort of helps advance these things? Is there a culture?
Yeah, do you know what it is? This is the most stripped back and basic way to do it, but we have an internal Slack channel for each and every client. And the GPT gets pinned in there. So client is onboarded. Here's their onboarding information. Here's the video lowdown, because we're a fully remote team. Sometimes Craig will bring a client in and I may not have ever met them. I need the context from him just as much as I need their onboarding information. Then that gets pulled into a GPT so that everyone on the team can feel like they get the opportunity to even just get to know the client in a way, and that's why we'd have a lot of these internally as well, because we try to make special effort to put in, I guess, what you would call a little bit more qualitative information about the client. They seem to have a preference for X. They mentioned this competitor a lot. They really want to rise above this. They hate the idea of, bidding on their brand and Google, like all of these little anecdotal things that make that particular client nuances easy to access for the entire team.
Yeah, you definitely give me a little bit to think about, because, I feel like maybe every time we use ChatGPT, we should be really thinking, is this something that will need to be repeated? And if it's something that need to be repeated, is that when you start thinking, well, maybe this process or this little function should be a GPT, and it's time to distribute and, show the rest of the team what it can do and how to do it.
Yeah. Do you find that have you found wider acceptance in your team as well?
I think it's varied.
Mm,
You know how it is. Like you have to kind of give people a little bit of a nudge in the right direction. Like some of the team members
mm.
are all over it, and some sort of aren't. And part of the reason of this podcast is not just for the wider world; it's for our own team to get some insights and inspiration as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm particularly interested. Thanks for sharing all that, Jen. So much to talk about. Let's see. What was your learning growth when it came to GPTs? Like, what newsletters are you subscribed to, and what did you do to get to the point of proficiency that you're at now?
Dive in and break it. I'm not particularly subscribed to any one particular content creator when it comes to learning about this stuff. I'm more of, and I always have been, it doesn't matter whether it's these AI tools or whether it's, if my bike chain went recently and I was like, I will fix this if it kills me. But it's one of those things, just, often it's the same as anything else. You're pulling up a YouTube video, you're pulling up a tutorial, ask ChatGPT how to use ChatGPT, which is the irony in of itself. But it's trial and error with anything. I find you're going to dive in, you're going to break it, you're going to mess it up. But if you keep going with it, the good thing is that I suppose is that I'm really intrigued by this space and new techs way before kind of AI came into play. And then when it was released in November of 2022, I remember that Christmas I'm the eldest of five, and the five of us were sitting around the table, and all of us play a different kind of musical instrument. I'm making it sound like the Von Trapp family now, but we're not. Um, and we were sitting down, and I was showing them ChatGPT. I was like, "Get it to write you a song. Tell it to write the chords. Tell it to do this. Tell it to do that." And everyone was kind of mesmerized by it. But none of my siblings work in the same industry as me. They're in very different fields. Like my brother's a builder, my other brother does work in software, and my sisters, they work in childcare, and they were just blown away by how easy it was to use, and they started using it afterwards, which is really early. That same Christmas, I did buy a lot of .ai domains. I had too much time on my hands, so hopefully they'll
Yeah,
be worth something someday. But like that, it's really the ease of use of it that allows anyone to progress very, very quickly. It's not one of those things that, if I wanted to become a coder, I'm gonna have to spend the next 3, 4, 5 years becoming really, really good at that. It's not the same with AI. It's an expedited process for sure.
right on. Like there's nothing more magical than seeing someone's eyes light up when they get it. And
Mm,
there's a lot of like cynical, thoughts and words around AI, and there's fears around it as well. But when you see someone who hasn't really got experience yet and they jump in and start actually using it, and then that goes to ChatGPT generally, but even on the
yeah,
GPT store, I love that little button on the top right, that little blue button that says create. It's create, I
yeah,
think, because that's it. Just start. It's incredibly easy, and anyone can do it. And I think that's one
yeah,
of the points here. Like anyone can jump in and start getting their hands dirty, and anyone can be an expert. And I'm fascinated by it, Jen, because we're seeing people that wouldn't have done this stuff before, like you just said, that are creating new things. And
yeah,
I think there's a creativity that comes from non-technical people. Us techies all the time think we know what we're doing, think we know what we want. There's a whole world out there that understand problems that we will never see, and now they've got some leeway and some strength to actually do something. I love it.
yeah. And I think what's interesting is that the business context of using these GPTs, I feel, is what's talked about 90% of the time. But I mean, I've started using it for everything. I was showing my sister the other day, who's three small kids, and she was like, "What'll I make for dinner?" And I was like, "Take a picture of what's in your cupboard.
Oh, that's good.
Tell it that the eldest child is dairy free,
Yeah,
and just get it to make the recipes. Go take a step further. Say you're also sustainable first focused. Just dive in and say, maximize the ingredients here for the next week, to minimize my food shop or wherever the case might be. But it's all of these small things that people don't realize will help them just in their day-to-day lives, not just in a business context.
right.
That's beautiful. Did you
By the way,
say?
man, I just want to point out that you might have a big family for an American family, having 5 siblings. I have 7 siblings, so I just want to let you know that we've outdone you by a couple there as well. It's the Irish Catholic way, right?
Yeah, of course.
Jen, you say you show your sister, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I showed my mom how to use GPTs, and she's also blown away of the simplicity of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's even sometimes, my mom might see a piece of content. She's like, "Did you write that? Did you?" I'm like, "No, it's AI." And she's like, "Cool. Don't know what that is, but it sounded great."
Well, as you know, when making content, a lot of the things that may go viral is showing the people a behind the scenes look. They love to see how an agency runs or how you talk to your teammates, things of that nature. Would you feel comfortable showing us a little bit of an inside scoop as to how you use some of these GPTs? For instance, maybe the Hook GPT one?
Yeah, let me just pull one up here now.
And these are the hooks that you've been using on social, right? Which are spectacular. It's funny, Raf. You asked earlier about what who Jen, any resources Jen might have for learning these things. Jen is one of the resources that I have for keeping up to date with a lot of this stuff going on. So if anyone out there jumps on Instagram or YouTube, I know Jen, you're starting another challenge on YouTube and finds Jen Bryan. She's got a ton of amazing content around GPTs, AI, and all the magical things that are happening in the world right now. I feel like Jen is feeding them to the masses. So get on over to wherever you get your content and you'll find Jen over there.
Am I sharing my screen effectively?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is essentially when you jump into create one of these. What I actually really love about this is that you have the two options to create and configure. So like if you don't even want to go as far as like doing all the research and uploading tons of files in here to give it some good structure, you can just click the create option and ask ChatGPT to help you build what you want to build, which I just think is really interesting. But essentially, this is for context. If you're creating Instagram content, you want to have a killer hook. There's no two ways around it. If you don't hook them in, they're not going to resonate with your content at all. It is probably the number one thing that is just the most beneficial thing in terms of growing your account. It's probably the biggest learning curve I had at the start. But since it's really taken off. So what I've done is I put in all of the hooks that I have ever done that have gotten more than 500,000 views. I did a backlog of research in terms of the best data that I could find out there, be it academic research, be it blog articles, be it other creators that have created lists of hooks that have performed with significant volume in terms of views. And now I can just go over here and ask it to write me a viral hook. So I can say, create a viral hook for a video about Google Ads, let's say, for example. And it will take its time, of course, because I'm showcasing it live. And then it'll say, stop wasting your money on Google Ads until you see this. Perfect. Then, okay, I don't love that. Write 10 variations. And then I can get it to spit back tons of different ideas. This is a very just basic and simple way to do this. But if you were sitting down to do this any other way, you can just waste a ton of time. Like you can go off and read all of these blogs and articles and research and go back through your data and all of that. Or you can import it in somewhere here once and then you can go from there. Think you know Google Ads? Think again after watching this. Discover the Google Ads hacks that can triple your return on investment. This is the ultimate guide to mastering your Google Ads in 2024. Like these are all hooks that you would, now, when you hear them now, you can kind of almost hear them in the platform itself as well. So that's a very simple, basic, stripped back use case that I think anyone could do with their data.
And Jen, just on the left-hand side, you want to scroll down here. I want to take a look at the documents. So you uploaded a bunch of documents here to support.
Yeah, exactly. So I have the instructions with a lot of my own data in here and with the information, and then a backlog of data. This is a mixture of things like academic research into psychology of hooks, engaging hooks that I have found from essentially like listicles from top creators that get average much higher views on average than others. Just every piece of information I could get my hands on that I felt was high enough quality to write viral hooks.
And once I use this GPT, all of my boring videos suddenly get exciting and people actually care about them.
That's the goal. But like that, you could use this anyway. Which way you might already have a script and you just need to improve the opening line. Dump that in, rewrite the hook for this, include the rest of it, try improve the rest of it. There's tons that you can do with these kind of things.
I love it. What do you think, Raf?
This is fascinating. As I'm learning from her, I'm thinking I'm so fortunate to be doing what I do. Like I get to talk to cool people and learn at the same time. That was genuinely what I was thinking. Jen, you're brilliant for putting all this together. But if this now people can try doing this on their own and they might find some success. But if they're running an agency and they want to have a pro that has been doing this with proven results, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at jenbryan._. I was unfortunate enough not to just get Jen Bryan, so there is a ._ at the end. Or you can find me at jen@velocitygrowth.com if you want to shoot me a direct email.
Okay, cool. So I want to say a quick reminder that this podcast is brought to you by 3Advance, the AI development team for startups. We help AI founders bring their ideas to life. Schedule a free consultation with our team, link in the description below. Now, carrying on the conversation with Jen, growth marketer founder, would you talk to us a little bit more about Linkbio.ie? What's that
Oh,
about? Yeah.
Linkinbio.ie. Oh, yeah, I threw that together a few years ago. It's a link in bio service, and I created it because it was cheaper to create it than to buy a year's subscription to an alternative service. So the savvy marketer will call it. But essentially, it's a free tool that anyone can use. You can just go to Linkinbio.ie. You can sign up and you can create essentially a set of links that you can put in your bio, and you can change your brand colors. You can pop in a verified mark. You can click to email. But the beauty of it is that most platforms charge you for the analytics side, but the analytics within this are free, and you can integrate it with Google Analytics and your suite of tools outside of that. So it's a simple, free, easy to use tool, and it costs me less to host it than a subscription to another platform. So I just said, why not share it with the world? And yeah, I think it's crossed at least 500,000 users at this stage, which is great. Maybe I should have monetized it.
It's not too late. It's not too late.
Not too late.
You'll have one more user after this at least.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Free analytics. Can't turn that down.
Exactly.
All right, let's see. Well, I want to make this a two-way conversation. And as you're here on the podcast with us, you know, Paul, what are some questions you may have for us? Literally anything you could ask.
What GPTs are you guys using at the moment? Like, what kind of things are you building? I'd love to know more about that. I mean, often in agency land, especially working remotely, you get stuck in your little bubble. So I'd love to hear more about what you guys are building and what you're using everything for.
Yeah, we don't use many internally like you're talking about, which is really inspiring right now because I got to go back and think about where the opportunities are here. Where we see things happening. I'll give you an example of one of our clients, right? So we got a client that we started doing these like $15,000 AI prototyping sprints. So we'll spend 1 month trying a proof of concept an AI related idea, and that could be anything. It could be GPT. It could be, in this case, it was a founder who we're going to have in this pod in a few weeks' time. That is a founder that's creating an app called Self-Speak that it's basically uses voice cloning to ChatGPT to create affirmations, and then voice cloning to put these affirmations in your own voice. So you say, "Hey, I'm going out for a walk the dog for 10 minutes, pop in affirmations, and I'll feel better about myself, and hopefully lead me to success or whatever." And it comes from the heart. This is the guy that it really worked for him creating his own affirmations, recording them back in the day. And now there's the ability to automate this whole process. So that's an example of the type of product we're building and we brought through these AI sprints. But what popped up just recently was he talked about, creating a GPT. And he actually, while we're in development, he created a custom GPT to do the same thing, to create these affirmations. So for us, we kind of see that as a really interesting use case because it's not a GPT that's it's not a product that started as a GPT.
Yeah.
It's a product that he's creating and he's getting ahead of the curve to test the market and hopefully get some usage and feedback and iterate on those affirmations in the process for creating the best content within the app. So that's kind of one thing that sort of ties together both our product development and the GPT. And the other side of it is like we have clients coming in right now. They are creating their own GPTs and then realizing, well, there's a product here. This isn't just a one-time little function. This could be developed into an entire thing.
Yeah.
And what we do is we build that thing, and it could be a mobile app, or it could be a website. It could be just a chatbot installed somewhere. But there's so much. I feel like there's so much opportunities, and all the playing around that we've done. We've created a few GPTs ourselves, nothing to be monetized. But the one I think that we covered last week was I created one that was just like an add to calendar function, which basically allowed you to take a screenshot of a event or a booking or a schedule of matches, and you take a screenshot, and it'll automatically create Google Calendar links. So you just click the link, and it bounces over to Google Calendar.
Yeah.
It's so simple, and it
just makes life so much easier, though, doesn't it?
It feels so good when it works.
And when it works is the key, isn't it?
And that's it. Like you said, I think we were talking about it earlier, is like, the GPTs are not 100% reliable, but, and it's funny, it's kind of like just real conversation. If it doesn't come back correct, just ask for it a second time. And it usually gets it right the second time, which is probably something you've experienced as well.
I'd love to go a layer. I wish I actually had more experience in the fitness industry, because I've become obsessed with like using my health data within these. So like I wear, people are always like, why are you wearing two watches? I'm not. I'm wearing a Whoop and an Apple Watch. They synchronize two different sets of data, but it's interesting because I'll export them and I import them into a custom GPT blended with, have you heard of Brian Johnson? He's this guy who's done like $2-3 million a year in studies on his health and biology over the last, I don't know how many years, but essentially his entire goal is to try reduce the biological age of different organs in his body to be as healthy as possible. But I love his stuff. I love researching it. I love reading it. But he's a 40-something-year-old man and I'm a 31-year-old woman. We need completely different things. But I'll have his data in there because it's publicly available. And then I have my own health data. And I can say, okay, well, he's saying do this, like eat, I don't know, I think he eats like 2,000 something calories a day. If I ate that, I wouldn't be able to get out the front door. So I have to say, okay, well, I'm this height and I'm this weight and I don't want to lose weight and these are my goals, but I want to stay healthy. Reflect on his information that is, the leading science, and tell me what I should be doing based on my data instead. So there's like, it's an interesting one to play around with, but like that, plenty of health and fitness companies out there could be monetizing something like that. They have a bank of data. You just export your data in and off you go. There's so many different ways to slice and dice it.
I think there's so many opportunities right now for new entrepreneurs to come up with new concepts and try them so cheaply. And that's the biggest thing with the GPTs. It's like it's so inexpensive to proof of concept right now. It's inexpensive to try things out, and inexpensive in terms of like the direct cost, but also your experience and your technical know-how is the barriers brought down, and so many opportunities, fitness, health, everywhere.
Yeah, and you know what? The most crucial skill you need is actually excellent communication skills. I think the only thing that you will fall short on in creating anything within these systems is your ability to communicate to it what you actually wanted to do. Because if you lack that skill, that's the only thing that's probably holding anyone back.
I heard this, I think I read this somewhere on LinkedIn, and I think it comes from a few years back, but it was talking about how the Industrial Revolution moved us from needing the brawn and strength to using our brain. And now we're having a new revolution where AI is appearing on the scene, and it's moving from, having intelligence and learning to actually being able to communicate and use your heart. So we've moved from muscle to brain to heart. And now it's like the communication, like you say, and being able to translate your needs into real English in order to get some serious results.
I saw someone recently, which was an interesting experiment, that they uploaded all of their childhood diary entries and had a conversation with their younger self, which I think is like the optimal version of what you're just describing there. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Sorry, this doggy here behind me, he's trying to get my attention frantically, but I'm sure he'll stay quiet.
This is the guest we really want on this podcast.
Yes, Fred.
Fred, welcome. What GPTs has Fred created though, Jen? Come on. You can't just show up all of a sudden.
No, but maybe I should create a Fred one. My partner is a vet, and I think actually that'd be an industry that could be interestingly disrupted by one of these things, couldn't it?
Well, we have some dog training and mental health apps coming soon, Jen. We'll keep you in mind.
Oh, interesting. Do.
Oh yes.
I'd
Oh
be an
yeah.
excellent tester for anything like that.
I love it.
Well, going back to what Jen said about the health metrics, she's certainly qualified to answer this question because she doesn't look a day over 21. So, what's one health metric that many people overlook, but it's key to staying healthy and young?
Sleep.
Sleep.
Sleep. Sleep
I
8
love it.
How do
hours.
you how do you track your sleep?
Whoop. And I sleep the length of time you sleep has no major relevance on the recovery you achieve the next day, depending on the actions you took the day before. So for example, if I don't go for a run, or if I, have a bad day and I'm just doing nothing, it shows up in my recovery very, very quickly. Myself and my friend and my mom and a few people went over to London for her birthday in January, and we had a great night. But my recovery the next day was 3%, which tells you everything. Like, even if I just have one beer, it's bizarre. It'll drop 10-15% the next day, but just helps with little things. Like, if I have a big day at work coming up, I'm back to back on calls, I'm just going to completely underperform. I'm going to underperform in everything, be it a basic conversation with someone in my life, or, setting up a Google ad account or whatever the case might be. But yeah, sleep,
So, Jen,
underrated.
you'd like this. Raf and I met for the first time in person last Friday at the Guinness Brewery. So we didn't do it
Oh,
last year, but there's a
in
new Guinness
Dublin.
brewery. No. There's a new Guinness brewery in Baltimore. Just I say
Ah,
an hour away, but at rush hour on a Friday, it is not an hour away.
I was like, that's a long old spin to meet in person.
The next 3 advanced retreat, we'll go to Ireland. Don't worry. We had one
That
planned
sounds
in the
good.
past, just before the pandemic, but that's another
I
story.
feel like everyone had just that one thing planned just before the pandemic.
We'll make it happen. I promise.
Well, switching gears, I've been thinking about this question as I was talking to you, Jen. What are maybe one or two marketing or psychology books that you'd recommend?
The Psychology of Influence by Robert Cialdini is a fantastic resource for anything like this. My copy is all bent and crumpled with notes and sticky notes and highlighter pen and everything, but I still go back to it every year or two at this stage and reread it. It's a book that you should have as like a resource. I think, when people leave school and then they leave the whole textbook context behind, they don't reference anything anymore to like do their work. Once upon a time we all sat at a desk and we pulled up books and we said, right, I need to write the answer to that. What was it in the book again? And we seem to I feel like everyone has just forgets that skill as soon as they enter the workforce. But I mean, everything that I do, I'll reference back to books. I mean, I'll even go, like, I'm a marketer with a lengthy experience. I don't necessarily need YouTube for Dummies, but I will still buy that book and use it as a reference point for, anything that I need. So it's one of those things. I live and die by books. I have so many of them. I'm absolutely an avid reader. I'm in the middle of this at the moment, $1 Million Weekend by Noah Kagan. And it's a fantastic book about just stripping everything back to basics in terms of, you have an idea. Okay. Everyone has ideas. Let's move to step 2. Try get your first customer. And it's as simple as, ring your family and friends and try get $1 off someone. Don't build anything. Just tell them the idea and ask them would they pay $1 for it. It's that whole concept of just getting yourself off the ground. I think it's an interesting sticking point for a lot of people. But the main thing that I always say to marketers is read books that are outside of the marketing space more frequently than you do the marketing books, because, if you're working off the same template as everyone else, that's fantastic. But it's the being able to tie something outside of marketing into marketing is better. Like, I'll often read like a philosophy or history book or, one book that's fantastic is The Secret History of Brands. And it goes through like the dark side of like Hugo Boss and all of these companies that have had controversial pasts, we'll call it, but reading books like those that are not your traditional good marketing, bad marketing strategy, this kind of that and the other, will make a massive difference over time, I think.
That's great. We'll have all those added to the description so I can track it myself.
I didn't know they were going to be all added to the description.
Jen,
Raphael, I've made a long to-do list for you.
let me ask you a question. Going back to the sleep thing, do you find like hardcover, like actual physical books help impact your sleep? If you read a book before going to bed, will that be good for your recovery?
It's certainly better than screen time. Although there is the trick to screen time. I actually do the blue light glasses.
Yeah.
They actually do the trick. Like if you must be on your phone before going to sleep, ideally like no screen time the hour before bed kind of thing. But if you throw on the blue light glasses, it actually makes a meaningful impact on your percentage recovery the next day.
All right. You heard it here.
Yeah.
I've got those. I've got some. They're actually orange glasses. They're wraparound, so they cover the peripheral. And I wear those like 2 hours before going to sleep.
Yeah, they're great. I just have these ones that look strange. Anyone who sees me in them, they're like, maybe you should have gotten a nicer pair. You can't wear them at any other time than just getting ready for bed. So
Exactly. Well, coming to the end of the podcast, 2 more questions. If you could wave a magic wand, what would you wish an AI agent could do for you and why?
just duplicate myself.
That's a lot of files to upload, huh?
I know, it's a lot of files to upload, isn't it? But actually, I'm doing some sponsored content soon with a company that is going to clone my likeness into an avatar and voice. And I'm going to do a stretch of content with it to see when people notice and if they notice.
I love that. We could just, scrape all your content, throw it into a GPT, and just have a conversation with you there, Jen. Maybe
Exactly.
podcast is with Jen.ai.
It's interesting because I had to put together a summary of different podcasts that I've been on recently, and I was on an episode of This Week in Startups like a year ago. And I went into the website, This Week in Startups, to find the episode number and find the link. And it already has a AI chat feature built into it. So I was like, oh, wow, I could have a conversation with it. I was like, how do I set up my paid ads? And it was giving back all the information that I had said in the podcast. It was like, do this first, then audit everything that you needed to do. And I just thought that is super interesting because, if you're someone 500 episodes in across different podcasts, there's a lot of data you probably have out there already without even realizing,
I think as well, a lot of things come out through conversation rather than sitting down and just writing out lists. I find it difficult myself to remember everything I know, and it's only someone's talking with me that's really getting these pieces out of me. And what I've started doing after I do a call, like a sales call or business development or whatever else, I will record a video summarizing it, and then have AI take that and summarize it again.
Yeah.
I have a number of so I have the video recording first of the actual conversation, and then my own thoughts afterwards. And it's that sort of conversational, human-like experience is works much better for me than typing it out and trying to remember it.
That's super interesting because I use a tool called Supernormal. It's an extension that I have in my browser that when I jump on a Google Meet, it takes the notes for me and ships me my to-do list afterwards. But it never gets the context from me. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Tiago Forte's second brain system. It's like a productivity system that I use Cal Newport's deep work mixed with Tiago Forte's second brain system as like Cal Newport is the philosophy and the theory of how you should do it, how you should focus, how you should structure your time. And then the back catalogue of information you have is I use this system called Tiago Forte Second Brain. And I use Notion to build it out. But like that, now that I'm thinking out loud, I'm like, that has my entire life inside in there. I treat my productivity holistically. It's not just about like here's the business growth that I need to have. It's like, okay, well, the dog needs to be walked. Everything else needs to happen. I need to go to the shop here. The rest, I need to eat healthy. I need to do some exercise. Like, it's a world of things we need to do every single day. But like that, I keep my notes for everything in there. Maybe that is my future clone now that I think about it.
It's worrying, but also there's some truth to it. It's going to be, but it's funny. The AI, AI is for me is not even sort of like there's talk about like AI replacing people and AI just will it ever reach the same capabilities of people? Well, it's begun to show me some of the really standard boring versions of what humans do right now. Like we did some cloned news podcasts, so we automatically created a news like a 3-minute news segment, and it wasn't great. But then I compared it to some of the content that's being put out that's real, and thinking
It wasn't bad.
is not. Well, it made me think the real content gets boring, and I think that I feel like this whole revolution is going to, like, people are afraid that it's going to impact art in a negative way. I feel like it's going to unleash and push art in many different ways because there's the desire and need to be different. There's desire and need for true creativity, not just the replication and rehashing. And that's what sort of excites me about this whole thing. It's like this
It's
new thing we've
interesting.
never seen.
Like, if you're a good artist, you have the potential to be a great artist. If you're a good marketer, you have the potential to be a great marketer. If you're a lazy marketer, now you have the potential to be a good marketer. The standards have completely changed. But I had this conversation with someone recently, and they were like, "Yep, but also a good scammer is now a great scammer, and now a great scammer is an exceptional scammer." So like, it works both ways across all industries and all skill sets, which is super interesting. The bar is just up here now, and people will fall behind quickly. It's unbelievable the amount of people who haven't even touched it yet. I was chatting to a CMO of one of Ireland's biggest brands who hasn't even opened ChatGPT yet, and I was like, "This is bizarre." What?
Yeah.
I was like, just so, and like they said, look, we had an intern and we found that they were writing some of our emails with it, and it didn't read well, so we have a blanket no on it now. And I was like,
Oh.
What? You let an intern figure out if like AI technology was suitable for your business as a whole? Just because they wrote one bad email? It's such a shitty situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I feel like, and sometimes watching your Instagram feed, I'm like, wow, I'm so behind. And I see what other people are writing about, and I feel like so behind. And then I realize, well, yeah, I'm behind the 0.1%, but there's still like a 95+% that's just waiting, slowly getting on this train. And it's all about perspective. And like you should have touched on,
and it's also all about, it's also all about just knowing when to use it. There is a use case for not using AI sometimes. There is a use case for, not letting it do your legwork. To take your work from like easy to, or from not easy to easy is one thing, but taking it from like, I don't want to do this to it doing it for me.
Yeah.
You still have to have a little bit of give and take with these things as well. I think
the key is like, allow it to be that procrastination killer to get you off the ground. Get you like, please don't just create something and put it out. It's really care about it, read it, understand it, and feel like and give your opinion. Otherwise, it is just regurgitating things that's already been done. So
exactly.
So as we wrap up this podcast, the final question that I'd like to do is, what's something that we didn't ask you that we should have asked you? Very open-ended.
Oh wow, that's a doozy. I honestly don't know. If you have to ask me one last question before what after the conversation that we had, and you have a list of questions you must have asked, was there one that you were like, oh, we should have put in that extra question there?
I've got one. When are you going to turn one of your when are you going to turn one of your great ideas or GPTs or link disseminators? When are you going to create your $1 billion product? Because I feel like it's coming.
I don't know. It's interesting because I heard recently, I think it was in the All In podcast or somewhere, that there's a group chat amongst Sam Altman and some of these bigger AI people that are placing bets on when the first solo entrepreneur will cross $1 billion and make their first $1 billion company, which is so interesting in of itself. But I think that step one for me is to actually move away from the customized audit tools and look at what a holistic one would look like. It would probably have to be industry specific, is probably the
Yeah.
broadest it could go, like e-commerce or something like that. But looking at that ability, and also I want to learn more about the next step. Okay, so I've built this GPT and there seems to be value there. How do I take that now? And it's probably where you guys come in. How do I take that concept and now go productize it? Because you can't really productize directly within ChatGPT. Yes, there's simple ways like, oh, go to my Gumroad, charge what you want and
Yeah.
get access to it, and that's fine. But there's a deeper layer here where it's like, this audit machine is working. Okay, Google has an API. How do I build around that? How could I layer this AI in and actually build a product out of it? So I must do step one, with step one, and actually try. I'll actually try challenge myself to get my first dollar from one of them. We'll see how it goes from there. We'll talk about the billions after.
We'll get into that later, Jen. Don't worry.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the What's Happening podcast, season 1 with GPT creators. Our host, Rafael Testai, myself, and Paul Murphy, and our very special guest, Jen Bryan. So if anyone would like to be featured on the podcast as a guest, you can submit in the link below. All the links to social media accounts for Jen could be found in the link below. And we thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Raf.